Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be using Tier Maker to make a tier list where we will rank all of the different armies of Warhammer 40k on their kitbashability. So the criteria that I've made up that I'm using for this is one, how easy the army is to kitbash, meaning that is it an army that lends itself well to kit bashing? Like, is that something that goes well with the actual lore or the look of the army? Two, is there a lot of room for kit bashing within the army? So can all the parts from different units in the army go together well and easily? And three, how easy does the army kit bash with other kits, and is there an abundance of other kits that go well with the army? So this is in no particular order. Nothing is, this is just my thoughts and opinions, and I'm sure yours will be very different. But let's just jump in and start taking a look at everything. So first up on our list of armies, we've got the Emperor's Golden Dick Scrubbers themselves, the Adeptus Custodes. And these are the premier, these are the elite of Warhammer 40k. So, where else could they go other than S tier, of course? No, I'm joking. They're going in D tier. They're trash. They're right down at the bottom where they belong. No, of course they're not trash. So just to clarify real quick, every army can be kit bashed. Everything can be a kit bash. You can make a kit bashed army out of anything. And of course I know this probably better than anybody, but so the Custodes are going in D tier. That was not a lie. The reason for this is the Custodes have a very specific look and a very specific set of war gear and a role in the universe. And to make a successful kit bash, it has to represent the model well enough that even though it's something completely different, it's not confusing to people to play against. There is not a whole lot of room for changing Custodes to where people can easily tell what they are. You totally could. You can do something crazy. You could make weird Scrapland Custodes. You could make weird Xenos Custodes or something. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of other things in the game that look like Custodes that would be clear. If you try to mix in Space Marine parts, if you try to mix in Stormcast Eternal parts, yeah, some of them can maybe work, but by and large, Custodes kind of need to stay as Custodes. Their armor is very Custodes. Their weapons are very Custodes. You can a little bit of mixing around, I guess, within the different Custodes units, but there's also not very many of them. So for those reasons, they're going in D tier. Trash. Emperor's finest? Nope. Down to the bottom where you belong. Okay. Next, after that, we've got the Adeptus Mechanicus. And these guys, I think I'm going to put... it's kind of tough between B and C. They're definitely not A. I'm going to go with B for now. I might change that later. And the reason for that is they're kind of in the same boat as Custodes in that, like, AdMech have a very specific look, but there is a lot of kits that could be used to make AdMech. They're hooded and robed infantry. There's a number of different Necromunda gangs, or even some of the Warcry sets that could be used for that. I've seen Night Haunt used for them, and amongst their different kits, there's a lot of room to mix and match parts. Like there's tons of different little spidery legs and weird little guns and blades and things that can all be mixed around pretty easily with them. So, like, you can't go in, there's not very much room to go and use like Space Marine parts in AdMech, but there's definitely some kits if you're willing to look for them, especially for the infantry, and the parts within their codex all mixed together quite well. Next we have the Astra Militarum, and I think I'm going to put them right about the same level as AdMech. Again, like, there's totally lots of room to customize guard. I've seen people do some pretty crazy conversions with them. Their vehicles are pretty unique, but you could make other vehicles work. It would just take quite a bit of effort, whether you're using a whole bunch of plastic card to modify a Genestealer Cults vehicle or something. But even aside from that, there's a lot of room to do their infantry very differently because of all the different guardsmen regiments. So you can very easily have an army where like all the vehicles are normal, but every single infantry is different. You could use Necromunda parts, you could use Genestealer Cults parts, you could use Warcry parts, you could use guard style infantry from different war games. There's a lot of room there, especially for the infantry, and because you're just talking about like normal human-sized infantry, there's a lot of room to mix those parts around. So I put them at about B tier. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. Now we are on to our first of the Space Marine codexes, the poster boys of 40k. Where else could I put them other than S tier? As much as it pains me to say it, there is just so much goddamn Space Marine stuff in this game. In this list alone, I think there's something insane like 11 or 12 Space Marine codexes, and I don't even know if that's counting the trader ones. All of the Space Marine kits can all go together. There is more of them than any other army by a factor of like double. Plus, most of the Chaos stuff and Loyalist stuff can be mixed together. Plus, you have all the stuff from Forge World that can all be mixed together. You can get custom, or you can get unique shoulder pads and heads and weird cool weapon upgrade kits, and plus all the Stormcast Eternal stuff can all go together. Plus, you can give them random cool Xeno stuff. And especially for ones like Blood Angels, where you've got unique characters like the Sanguinor or the Librarian Dreadnought, there is so much room for Space Marines. I have to put them at S tier. So from going forward, all the Space Marines are just going to go up into S tier. They just have an unholy amount of stuff. So most of it isn't even like the most unique or crazy looking kit bashes, but just like the fact that everything can go together and there's just like buckets and buckets and buckets of it. It's frankly like overwhelming, the amount of Space Marine stuff that you can get your hands on for kit bashing. So all the Space Marines are going to go up into S tier because for one reason or another they're all essentially the same. So after Blood Angels, we have Black Templars, which again going to be S tier for exactly the same reasons as the first one and with every other one following. Now after them, we get into something spicy, and that is Chaos Demons. Demons got to be S tier. Literally anything can be a demon, and that's what's so beautiful and wonderful about them. Any creature, any amalgamation of parts and green stuff and whatever, it can be a demon. You can fit it into any of the armies, twist it, bend it any which way you want, you can make it a demon. They are probably hands down one of the best armies for kit bashing. If I had an S plus tier, they would go there, because literally it is limitless. You can use any kit, you can use anything. You want to take a Space Marine and stick a whole bunch of nasty stuff on them and call them, some sort of corn demon character, the Blood Master, whatever, you could totally do that. You want to take all kinds of weird Age of Sigmar monsters or dragons or dinosaurs, make them into demons, totally do that. You want to take, a bottle of Scudge that you scraped off your middle school bathroom floor and turn that into a dip. You don't even need to do anything. It's already a Nurgle demon. It's perfect. It is a phenomenal army for kit bashing, and that's exactly why it is my next upcoming army. And of course, I'm making a all-Kroot demon army for this exact reason. Now, moving on, who do we have next? We have Chaos Knights. Now, this is a bit of an interesting one. I'm gonna put it up in A tier just because it is chaos. That opens up a whole realm of possibilities, because you can obviously make a knight that's dedicated to any of the chaos gods. You can incorporate really interesting bases and different models onto the base. There's so much room on their armor to have whether it's dead Space Marines or Tau or things stuck to them. I've seen people, make them like a demonic knight and, use like monstrous creature bits and things. All kinds of ways you can go with green stuff and chains and whatever. There's a lot you can do with a Chaos Knight because it is chaos. It's fine that the knight doesn't, look quite right. You can use parts from different things. It can be a mishmash of things.
and as a chaos thing, you're totally open to do that. And that's the great thing about chaos, and as I already said with demons, is it really just opens up that whole realm of possibilities, because there is no structure, there is no uniformity, there's nothing to say that this knight hasn't been taken over by a demon, or some crazy, tech priest, or, chaos warpsmith or whatever didn't stick some other, dreadnought piece on there, or something else. So they are going to go in A tier, and I think that's pretty fitting for them. Now, following that, we have the Chaos Space Marines, which again, just like the normal Space Marines, is going to go up there right at the very tippy top. For the exact same reason, you obviously have all the Chaos Space Marine bits, you will have all the Loyalist Space Marine bits. You then, as opposed to the, what are they called? The Stormcast Eternal parts from Age of Sigmar, you have all of the different Chaos factions from Age of Sigmar, as well as, because they are chaos, they can then be mutated, so you can use bits from any number of different kits, whether you want to add tentacles or extra arms or heads or things. It is just as limited or unlimited as any of the other chaos things, so they're definitely S tier, if not S plus tier. Now, following them, we have the Craft World Eldar, which I'm also going to put up at S tier for similar reasons to that. So the Eldar range is also quite a big range. All of their different parts and kits all fit together quite well. And on top of that, you have several different elf factions in Age of Sigmar, and any of those kits will go well with your Eldar. If you want to make like Eldar Exodites and add in some different creatures and more organic things, you can totally do that. If you just want to have some cool different looking weapons or heads or things, you can absolutely get those from those Age of Sigmar kits. So there is a very large amount of ranges to draw from with any of the Eldar factions. So the Dark Eldar, they'll probably fall in that same category as well. Now, following them, we have several different varieties of Marines as well, and yep, you guessed it, they're all going in S tier. Same with the Dark Eldar, as I said, for the exact same reasons. They're going S tier as well. Again, you have all those Age of Sigmar factions. There is a Dark Elf faction for Age of Sigmar, as well as any of the other ones. As I hemmed and hawed about A tier because their range is a little bit smaller, and not quite as many of the things fit so easily into them, just because they've got a lot of weird, like, monstrous things. But then I remembered all those weird monstrous things also lend themselves very well to kit bashing, and I've seen people use things like the Crypt Ghouls and the Crypt Horrors to make the different grotesques and whatnot. So definitely an S tier ranking as well. Quite a few ranges to draw from there. Different armies that you can mix together with them, and as I said, all Space Marines are going S tier. It sucks there's so many of them. It makes S tier look really bloated, but they could really all just be lumped under one. All different Space Marines, they're all going S tier. I didn't even touch on them, but the Death Guard, obviously they're S tier. It's everything with normal Space Marines, you just gotta add some gross stuff on top. Now, I said that every Space Marine was going S tier. This is the one exception to that rule, and that is the Grey Knights. While there is still quite a bit of room for kit bashing in the Grey Knights faction, where I've seen people, kit bash the whole army to be Primaris, and I've seen them, you can do weapon swaps, obviously, with different weapons from different Space Marine kits. The Grey Knight armor style is very unique, where they have a lot of extra iconography and symbols and whatnot, and it's really tough to get armor that looks just like that anywhere other than the Grey Knights range. So it limits it a lot by being so specific. Like, for example, if you use the Stormcast Eternal, their armor doesn't have, it's completely different. So it would take a lot of work to make it look that way. And even like if you just swap the shoulders and stuff, that wouldn't be quite enough. So they're quite a bit trickier to kit bash. Not that it can't be done, it just doesn't lend itself as well to that. So for that reason, I'm going to put them down in B tier. Obviously, any faction can give me kit bashed, I already said that before, but they just don't lend themselves quite as well as any of the other Space Marine factions. Now, following them, we have everybody's least favorite faction. It's the Genestealer Cults, and I'm just kidding. I know there's a whole 4 Genestealer Cults players out there, so I don't want to offend them. Get them all worked up into a rage. They might go and have to, cause an insurrection. But, anyways, the Genestealer Cults, believe it or not, S tier, and they're S tier because, by their very nature, they're kind of ragtag, they're kind of thrown together, they're kind of they're an uprising of normal people. So, well, the Imperium is full of normal people on all different types of worlds in all different kinds of settings. So just that right there, you can have Genestealer Cults from one planet looking completely different from Genestealer Cults to another planet. So just as a faction, as the idea of the faction, very, very good for kit bashing. I've seen some amazing armies where they've made like AdMech Genestealer Cults, and I know that's actually like a Genestealer Cults faction. It's called like the Twisted Cog, I think. And so any humanoid type body is going to work well for any Genestealer Cults infantry. If you want them to be AdMech Genestealer Cults, if you want them to be more like, you know, scrappy Raider Genestealer Cults, if you want them to be more like Imperial Guard Genestealer Cults, and then all of the corresponding vehicles to go with that. So if you made them AdMech, you could start using a bunch of AdMech vehicle parts to make their various creations. You could use like AdMech robots to make some of the big, more mutant Genestealers, like I forget what it's called, the Abominant and stuff. There's a lot of room there for them, so they're definitely S tier. There's a ton of different ranges you can draw from them, and it would be a really interesting one to have a go at, because it would be wide open for you. Now after that, we have the Harlequins, and holy shit, is this a long video. Believe it or not, I'm actually going to put them in D tier. There could be an argument for C or B, but just because they're such a small faction, there's very few units, it doesn't lend itself well to kit bashing. You could of course be mixing in some Eldar or Dark Eldar parts, but then because they have so many very similar units, they both have little like jetpack things, and they both have some kind of fighty little infantry characters. Like if you start kit bashing those parts, it's probably just going to look like that thing. Like if you start kit bashing Dark Eldar parts, it's probably just going to look like a succubus or whatever, or a Farseer if you're using Eldar parts. So it would be kind of tough. And again, like if you start trying to use like Age of Sigmar parts, it's probably going to look more like you're doing like Eldar Exodites. So you certainly can, it's certainly doable. It just might not be super clear, and because it's such a small army already and it's so specific and specialized, kind of the same deal as the Custodes, like there's not a ton of wiggle room there where people are going to even really know what you're making. It could totally look cool, and as long as everybody's fine with it, maybe as long as you paint it in the crazy Jester colors, it's probably fine. But for me, I'm going to put it in D tier, although obviously you could make it work if you really wanted to. And here we have several more versions of Space Marines. We can just skip right over them. We know exactly where they're going. Now we have Imperial Knights. Imperial Knights are interesting. They're not nearly as interesting as Chaos Knights though. For again, they have to kind of look a certain way. I have seen some amazing conversions done with them, but it's a lot more tricky, because if you start going too wild, then you're just going to end up as Chaos Knights. You certainly can do things like you can add extra, trophies and things to their armor. But other than that, there's not a whole lot you can do to where it's going to start looking like something totally different. It's like, again, it's certainly doable, and it's definitely not like there's no options. That's why I'm putting it at C tier, not D tier. But it's just a little bit trickier to find things that work. Like I said, you start going a little bit too far, it starts looking more like a Chaos Knight. And there's probably the best looking kit bashes for them usually involve 3D printing, which isn't really accessible to a lot of people. Because if you're trying to like kit bash different Imperial Knights together, well, that gets really expensive. So it's just kind of a tough one. And not the most options. It's not like Chaos where you get just like to do whatever the fuck you want. Now, on to everybody's favorite spooky boys. We have the Necrons. I'm going to go ahead and throw them in B tier. Basically, all of their different kits and all the different parts, they fit very well together. And they do have a few very specific options that work well for them. I have seen it done where people take, what are they called? The Oziark Bone Reapers, and they've mixed in some parts from them. Then it's kind of tough though, because they don't really look like metal skeletons anymore. So you'd have to, if you're doing that, you have to kind of do the whole army, which would get really expensive because you're basically just buying like Necron weapons to go on the Oziarch bodies. So that would be a pricey kit bash to do a whole army like that. If you only did a couple units, it'd probably look a bit weird. You'd have some bone guys and some mostly metal guys. But all their parts across their own range, they all go together very well, and they're easy to mix and match and make some like unique staff weapons for your characters or whatever. So you have to throw them in B tier. There's an argument for A tier there, I think, but I think B is pretty fair for them. Now it's time for everybody's favorite living mushrooms, and holy shit, this video is going to be long. I really need to get going quicker here. Of course, orcs are S tier. Doesn't even need to be said why. Literally everything is orc. Everything can be looted. Everything can be crumped together. They're up there with demons, with one of the most kit bashable factions. There's several different Age of Sigmar orc armies that you can draw parts and models from. Literally almost any like monstrous creature, you could slap a bunch of armor on it, call it a big squig monster. You know, any vehicle, you slap enough extra parts on it, it's an orc vehicle. It doesn't even have to be parts. It can be pieces of sprue, pieces of cardboard, literal garbage. Like, it doesn't matter. Anything can be orky. You can paint it up so easily, smash together parts. It's a fantastic army for kit bashing, and you know, like, literally sky's the limit for them. Now, more Space Marines, blah blah blah, we all know where they're going, and I apologize, it actually looks like I have like doubles of a bunch of the pictures here, like different codex covers. Here's something interesting, Adeptus Sororitas. This one's tough. I wanted to say D tier at first, but then I got thinking a little bit about some of their weird units, and I'm gonna go with C. So the thing is, so most of their army, I'm gonna say D tier. There's not a whole lot for the actual sisters themselves and like their vehicles and stuff. Like, it's got like such a specific look and such a specific feel. Like, you would have to be an absolute mad lad to be like, the sisters of battle? No. I'm making the misters of battle and going like, I'm kit bashing the whole range to be dudes and not religious. Like, that's kind of their thing. So the thing that I was thinking is, like, again, like, between their models, there's room to switch around arms and weapons and heads and things. And then for their weird things like the penitent engines and whatever I don't know their units very well. They've got a couple like kind of slave whippy people that are like weird. You can make some interesting models out of those with some different kits if you wanted to, although they have a new kit that looks good, so I don't know why you would feel the need. Blah blah blah, more Space Marines, only these ones are furries. And but now we get to our Tau. Tau are kind of an interesting one. Obviously it's my most famous kit bash army by far, my Kroot Tau. But honestly, would not put them that high on the old kit bashing tier list. Kind of debate. It's honestly not the best. Maybe C, maybe B. I don't think A. The exception would be the auxiliaries, obviously, like our Kroot or whatever. I'm gonna throw it at B because there is quite a bit you can do. The auxiliaries open up a lot for them, but they are very limited in their official models for them. The Tau themselves don't have a ton, but their kits can interswap pretty easily. Like, for example, the different parts of their infantry can go together fairly well, like the different ones, and I've seen people make like unique ethereals using more like like breacher style bodies and stuff, so they're a little more armored. But yeah, basically I would put them at B, basically carried on the back by their auxiliaries, because obviously like Kroot and Vespid are really cool, unique models. And if you want to go down the route of trying to make more Kroot and Vespid things than are actually available in the game, then that opens it up for you, and obviously that's the route that I went down. Now we have the Thousand Suns, and they, surprisingly, because they're chaos, are actually going way at the bottom, D tier, in the dust. Haha, get it? But where they belong. The Thousand Suns have probably the most unique and tricky to kit bash aesthetic of any of the powered armor factions, because they are space Egyptian sorcerer marines. Now again, nothing is impossible. Just because it's in D tier doesn't mean you gotta fill up my comment section and be like, well, I made a kit bash Thousand Suns. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you're gonna have to work a lot harder for it, because they are a very small faction. They're a very unique faction. None of the other Space Marine armor looks anything like their armor. So unless you're going to be like, this is my other Sorcerer Chaos Space Marine warband that doesn't like, if you're going Thousand Suns, you're Thousand Suns. Otherwise, you're going to be different Chaos Space Marines. The exception is you can add like more mutated parts to them with, you know, green stuff or some Chaos Demon parts and things like that. You could do that sort of thing. But if you're going to be using their armor, it's really just their armor. Obviously, you can do like some weapon swaps and stuff if you want to do that, but not a great army for kit bashing, in my opinion. And now, last but not least, we have the Tyranids. Tyranids, considering they're a faction that's literally all about like growth and change and rapid, you know, mutation and whatever, actually are going to go in B tier, because kind of like some of the other factions, there is nothing else like them. Like, Tyranids are Tyranids. There's almost no other models that are looking enough like Tyranids to be Tyranids. There's very few exceptions. There's a handful of like bug-ish models that I guess you could maybe do with a lot of green stuff, but that would be very tricky. The reason they're going in B tier is because their models in their range go together better than probably any other faction, like in terms of making unique and weird creatures. The heads between any of the large creatures, the arms between any of the large creatures, the bodies, the tails, they can all intermix very, very well, and you can make some really unique, crazy big creatures. Tons of people make Dimacherons out of like 2 Turbogon kits for cheaper than the Forge World one, and it's a lot of fun to mash those things all together. If you go look online, there's hundreds of unique Hive Tyrants and Swarm Lords and things, and they're mostly just using other bits from existing kits. But so for that reason, they're going in B tier. Now, that takes us to the end of our list for today, guys. Like I said, this is just my opinion. You don't have to agree, but maybe leave a comment down below about what you think, if you agree or disagree, or if you think things should be moved around. This is my first time using Tier Maker, and it was a lot of fun, so I think I'm going to do more of these in the future with different ideas. Obviously not more of the same here. But if you like what you see and you want to see more, feel free to subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. I'm also doing a drunk live stream Friday night, which by the time this comes out, I think it will be tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so 10 p.m. at night. Come hang out. We're celebrating hitting 1K. I will be drinking and painting my Crewtoberfest entry, so it should be a lot of fun, and I'm sure I'll make a fool of myself. Either way, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later tonight, I guess, or whenever the next time I post. Bye for now.